Hi, I'm Dr. Andrew Strauss. I'm a chiropractor who specializes in the conservative treatment of scoliosis in children and adults using exercise and bracing. I've been in practice for over 40 years, and my practice is located just outside New York City. Many people would like to know at what age does scoliosis stop progressing? I'm going to give you this answer based on what are called natural history studies. Natural history studies have been done all over the world. Scoliosis research is particularly prominent in Europe, in Spain, France, Germany, and Italy. In Asia, we see scoliosis research in South Korea, China, and Japan, and in North America, in Canada, and the United States. There are many people researching scoliosis. Natural history means that they've studied what happens to people if they do nothing. In other words, they have had no treatment, they've had no surgery, they've had no conservative treatment like exercising or bracing. What happens to those people over their lives? And this gives us an idea about why scoliosis continues to be a progressive condition throughout life and how that happens. There are two basic types of scoliosis that the adult will have. They can have adolescent scoliosis in the adult. In other words, they had scoliosis from childhood, but it doesn't just go away. Now, when they're skeletally mature, they become an adult with adolescent scoliosis. The other type of scoliosis, called degenerative or de novo scoliosis, and this starts at around 40 to 50 years of age, and it's essentially due to arthritic changes from wear and tear, maybe trauma that the person's had through injury or through sports, or maybe even due to the type of work that they did. If it was a physical type of work, the spine begins to degenerate, the ligaments holding the spine together begin slack, and the spine will collapse into a scoliosis. Now, with adolescent scoliosis, we see that it can be a rapidly progressive condition while the child is growing. Growth seems to be the main stimulator for curve progression. The curve will continue to get worse during childhood at a rate of 10 to 20 degrees per year, but that stops when the child hits their skeletal maturity. You no longer get that rapid progression. At that point, the progression rate goes way, way down to around 0.5 to 1 degree per year. So we have rapid progression up until skeletal maturity. After maturity, from 20, let's say, until around 40, we'll have very, very slow, half a degree to 1 degree a year. At 40, it will tick up, but only slightly. Now you'll have around 1 to 2 degrees a year. And at 60, you're going to see the curve size progress again, around 2 to 4 degrees per year. So you can see that the answer to the question, at what age does scoliosis stop progressing? There is no stopping. Scoliosis is a lifetime condition. But once the person has achieved skeletal maturity, now the progression rate is very, very slow. But let's say, for example, you have a 20-year-old with a 30-degree curve, and it's going to progress at a very slow rate, half a degree a year, and that person is going to live to be 90 years old. So now you have 70 years at 0.5 degrees per year, adds another 35 degrees onto the curve, you have quite a significant curve. And this is why it is so important for the child to seek care and why the adult should seek care as soon as possible and not allow the curve to be progressive through their aging process. Here's an image of a 5th grade class. And the reason I show this is because I want you to understand that the girl develops a larger curve than the boy, and that's because the girl goes through her adolescent growth spurt at a younger age. You can see in this 5th grade class, the girls are towering over the boys, but we also know that the boys are going to catch up and go past the girls in height, but at an older age. So it's very important for the clinician to understand where is the child in their growth process to know when they're going to have that slowdown in the progression rate of the scoliosis from 10 to 20 degrees a year to 0.5 to 1 degree. And we can tell this by looking at various things. Interestingly, one of the ways is by looking at an X-ray of the left hand. There's an atlas of the left hand showing the maturation of the bones of the hand, and we can match that child's hand to the atlas and see where they are at in their skeletal growth. The other way is by looking at something called the riser sign, and we can see a picture here of the riser sign. This is the ossification or the finishing of bone development of the pelvis. And it happens in a very structured way. And we can say, okay, this person's riser 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. And that tells us where they're at in their skeletal maturity. Another factor is for a female, when do they start to get their periods? Because we see that skeletal maturity is going to happen from 1 year before they get their period to 1 year after they get their period. Another factor contributing to the progression of the curve is genetics. This is something that's a little bit less tangible because it's not something that we can see. In fact, there was a test that was developed about 20 years ago called the Scoliosis score, and this was a saliva test which evaluated the DNA to see, was this person going to develop a large scoliosis? It prompted people to take action, gave them a sense of necessity if they saw their genetics are pointing to a large curve developing. Unfortunately, when researchers around the world tried to replicate the results of this scientific study, they found that the Scoliosis score was only valid in Caucasian females with a small curve. So it did not apply to males. It did not apply to people already having large curves. It did not apply to Asians or blacks. So that company, when this research was developed, that company went out of business overnight. And to this day, we have not had a successful genetic test which can tell us the probability of developing a large curve. Another factor which strongly influences scoliosis progression in adults is the amount of degenerative changes that are in the spine. Degeneration to the spine is due to arthritis, is due to the wear and tear associated with traumas that the person may have had, is due to the wear and tear associated with sport if the person's been active in sport, or even due to their employment if they've had a very physically active job. And when there's a lot of degenerative changes in the spine, this can allow the ligaments supporting the spine to get lax, and the spine can collapse into the scoliosis. We call this postural collapse, and while it's present in every scoliosis, it's something that has a much stronger effect on the adult with degenerative scoliosis. If we add to this metabolic disease, for example, osteoporosis, where the person has a poor bone density or low calcium content in the bones, this can cause the bones to collapse and fracture on themselves, which then will facilitate the progression of the curve again. So we see, in answer to the question, when does scoliosis stop progressing? The answer really is, unfortunately, it never stops progressing. It's just that the rate of progression varies. It goes very rapidly at childhood. Then it goes into a very slow mode throughout middle age. But then again, in older age, it can then magnify and become faster.